The remarkable rise of Toyotomi Hideyoshi, from peasant to power. Imagine living in a world where your birth determines your destiny, where being born a peasant means you'll die a peasant. Now imagine defying those ironclad rules of society, climbing from the absolute bottom to the very top, becoming the most powerful person in an entire nation. This isn't a fairy tale. This is the true story of Toyotomi Hideyoshi, a man who rewrote the rules of social mobility in feudal Japan. In the year 1537, while Henry VIII ruled England and the Renaissance flourished in Europe, a baby was born in a humble farming village in Japan's Owari province. This child, who would later become known as Hideyoshi, entered a world where social classes were as rigid as the steel in a samurai's sword. His father was a peasant foot soldier, not even a proper warrior, and his family was so poor that some days they couldn't even afford rice for dinner. But young Hideyoshi possessed something that no amount of poverty could diminish, an unshakable determination to rise above his circumstances. As a child, while other peasant boys resigned themselves to lives in the fields, Hideyoshi was already showing signs of the shrewd negotiator he would become. Local legends tell of how he would trade rice balls with other children, always managing to get a better deal through his quick wit and charismatic personality. At the age of 6, tragedy struck when his father died, leaving the family in even deeper poverty. His mother remarried, but his stepfather showed little interest in this ambitious, monkey-like child who seemed too clever for his own good. Yes, monkey-like. Hideyoshi was small for his age and had distinctive features that earned him the nickname Saru, monkey. But what others meant as an insult, he would later wear as a badge of honor. In his early teens, Hideyoshi did something unprecedented. He ran away from home. In an era when leaving one's village without permission could result in death, this was an extraordinary act of courage, or perhaps foolishness. He set off for the temple of Komyoji, where he briefly served as a page, but temple life proved too constraining for his ambitious spirit. By his late teens, Hideyoshi had taken on various jobs, from sandal-bearer to monk's servant. Each position taught him something valuable about human nature and the art of serving those in power. But his most crucial early role was as a sandal-bearer for the powerful Matsushita family. Here he learned the importance of literally and figuratively keeping pace with the warrior class. His big break came in 1558 when he heard about Oda Nobunaga, a powerful warlord who was rapidly gaining influence in Owari province. Nobunaga was known for his unconventional thinking and willingness to promote talent regardless of social status. For someone like Hideyoshi, this was an opportunity too good to pass up. The story of how Hideyoshi entered Nobunaga's service is a masterclass in seizing opportunity. While other aspirants waited formally to present themselves, Hideyoshi took a different approach. He stationed himself at the castle gate, day after day, rain or shine. But instead of just standing there, he began helping with small tasks, organizing supplies, running errands, and most importantly, observing everything and everyone. One day, Nobunaga noticed this small, monkey-like man who seemed to be everywhere at once, always busy, always helpful. What caught his attention wasn't just Hideyoshi's diligence, but his uncanny ability to anticipate needs before they were expressed. Here was someone who understood that true service wasn't about waiting for orders. It was about solving problems before they became problems. In an age when warriors prided themselves on their martial skills, Hideyoshi's greatest weapon was his mind. He could read people like others read battlefield maps, understanding their desires, fears, and motivations. This emotional intelligence, combined with his tireless work ethic, soon made him indispensable to Nobunaga. From sandal-bearer to errand runner, from errand runner to battlefield messenger, from messenger to trusted advisor, Hideyoshi's rise within Nobunaga's ranks was unprecedented. Each promotion came not through battlefield prowess or noble birth, but through his exceptional ability to get things done, to turn seemingly impossible situations into victories. One of his most famous early achievements was the construction of the Tsunemata Castle, what would later be known as the One-Night Castle. When Nobunaga needed a fortress built in enemy territory, most commanders said it was impossible. Hideyoshi said he'd do it in one night. Using a combination of clever psychology and brilliant organization, he prefabricated the castle parts in secret, then assembled them under cover of darkness. The enemy awoke to find a fully constructed castle where there had been only empty land the day before. This feat perfectly encapsulated Hideyoshi's approach to problems, creative thinking combined with meticulous planning and flawless execution. It wasn't just about building a castle. It was about understanding human psychology. The sight of a castle appearing overnight had such a powerful psychological impact on the enemy that they retreated without a fight. By 1582, Hideyoshi had become one of Nobunaga's most trusted generals. His rise from sandal-bearer to military commander was unprecedented in Japanese history, but fate had an even greater role in store for this former peasant, one that would test every skill he had developed on his remarkable journey. It happened on a hot summer morning in June 1582. Hideyoshi was leading a campaign in western Japan when urgent news arrived. Oda Nobunaga, his lord and mentor, had been betrayed and killed by one of his own generals, Akechi Mitsuhide. In what would become known as the incident at Honnoji Temple, Mitsuhide had surrounded Nobunaga while he was staying at the temple and forced him to commit suicide. This was the kind of crisis that could destroy or make a career. Many generals would have frozen, paralyzed by indecision. Not Hideyoshi. Within hours of receiving the news, he had already set his plan in motion. While other warlords were still processing the information, Hideyoshi was already marching his army back to Kyoto. What happened next showcased the brilliant strategic mind that had brought him so far. Instead of taking the expected route back to Kyoto, Hideyoshi forced his army to make an extraordinary forced march through difficult terrain. His troops covered about 40 kilometers a day, an almost impossible feat in that era. When they finally encountered Mitsuhide's forces at Yamazaki, Hideyoshi's army was exhausted, but they had achieved complete tactical surprise. The Battle of Yamazaki was more than just a military engagement. It was Hideyoshi's audition for leadership of Japan. He didn't just defeat Mitsuhide, he crushed him totally, using a combination of superior positioning, clever use of terrain, and psychological warfare. The battle lasted just a few hours, but its impact would echo through centuries. Mitsuhide, who had dreamed of replacing Nobunaga, was killed while fleeing the battlefield. His time as a potential ruler lasting just 13 days. But Hideyoshi's greatest challenges were still to come. Being the first to avenge Nobunaga gave him an advantage, but he was far from the obvious choice to succeed his former lord. Other powerful warlords had better claims through blood or rank. Tokugawa Ieyasu, another of Nobunaga's top generals, had a more prestigious samurai lineage. Nobunaga's own sons had hereditary claims. Yet Hideyoshi would ultimately outmaneuver them all. His approach to consolidating power revealed the sophisticated political mind behind the simple peasant facade. Instead of immediately claiming Nobunaga's position, Hideyoshi initially supported Nobunaga's grandson as heir. This shrewd move gave him time to build alliances and eliminate rivals while appearing to be the loyal servant he had always been. One by one, Hideyoshi neutralized potential threats, sometimes through force, but more often through negotiation. He was a master of the carrot-and-stick approach, offering generous terms to those who submitted while ruthlessly crushing those who resisted. Many chose to join him willingly, impressed by his combination of strength and magnanimity. By 1585, Hideyoshi had achieved what seemed impossible. He had become the de facto ruler of Japan. the emperor bestowed upon him the title of Imperial Regent, Kampaku, a position traditionally reserved for members of the highest-ranking noble families. For a former peasant to receive this title was unprecedented. It was as if a medieval European peasant had become the Pope's right-hand man. But Hideyoshi wasn't content with just holding power. He wanted to transform Japan. He implemented sweeping reforms that would shape Japanese society for centuries. One of his most significant acts was the sword hunt of 1588, where he ordered the confiscation of weapons from peasants across Japan. On the surface, this was about maintaining order, but it was also about solidifying class distinctions, ensuring that another peasant couldn't follow his path to power. Perhaps the most fascinating aspect of Hideyoshi's rule was how he balanced raw power with cultural sophistication. The same man who could field massive armies also hosted elaborate tea ceremonies and promoted the arts. He built the magnificent Osaka Castle, covered parts of it in gold leaf, and filled it with priceless artistic treasures. It was as if he was trying to prove that a peasant could surpass even the highest-born nobles in matters of taste and culture. His famous golden tea room was the perfect symbol of this duality. The small tea house was literally covered in gold leaf, making it probably the most expensive tea room ever created. Yet it was used for the tea ceremony, a ritual that emphasized simplicity and restraint. This contradiction between humble origins and magnificent display, between military might and cultural refinement, defined Hideyoshi's rule. At the height of his power, Hideyoshi controlled more of Japan than any ruler before him. The peasant boy who once couldn't afford rice now lived in a castle adorned with gold. But like many who achieve their wildest dreams, Hideyoshi found that success brought its own challenges, and that the greatest threat to his legacy might be himself. His ambitions grew even larger. No longer content with ruling Japan, Hideyoshi set his sights on continental Asia. In 1592, he launched an audacious invasion of Korea, with China as his ultimate goal. This campaign revealed both the scope of his ambition and its limits. While his armies initially achieved significant success in Korea, the campaign ultimately proved to be a costly overreach. The Korean invasion showed a different side of Hideyoshi, one where his humble origins might have actually worked against him. Unlike most Japanese rulers who had been trained from birth in the arts of governance, Hideyoshi had learned everything through experience. This had served him well in his rise to power, but governing a nation and conducting international relations required different skills. Yet even as his foreign ambitions faced setbacks, Hideyoshi's domestic achievements were remarkable. He created Japan's first comprehensive census, mapping and measuring every piece of land in the country. He standardized currency and weights, making commerce easier. And perhaps most significantly, he established a rigid class system that would define Japanese society for the next 250 years. Ironically, the man who had broken through every social barrier worked to ensure no one could ever repeat his journey. His class reforms strictly separated warriors, farmers, artisans, and merchants, making social mobility nearly impossible. It was as if he wanted to be remembered as the exception that proved the rule, the only peasant who would ever rise to rule Japan. The final years of Hideyoshi's life were marked by both triumph and tragedy. In 1593, his second wife gave birth to a son, Hideyori. But as Hideyoshi aged, he became increasingly concerned about his son's future. He created an elaborate system of 5 regents to govern until his son came of age, yet also ordered the execution of his nephew and adopted heir, Hidetsugu, along with his entire family, an act that shocked even his hardened contemporaries. Hideyoshi died in 1598, leaving behind a transformed Japan. The country he had unified would soon enter its longest period of peace in history, though not exactly as he had planned. His young son Hideyori would never rule. Instead, it was Tokugawa Ieyasu, one of those 5 regents, who would establish the shogunate that would govern Japan for the next 250 years. Think about this. In an age when most people never traveled more than a few miles from their birthplace, when social class was considered divine destiny, a peasant boy dared to dream of ruling a nation, and succeeded. Hideyoshi's story reminds us that sometimes the greatest limitations we face are not the ones society places on us, but the ones we accept for ourselves. The next time you face a seemingly insurmountable obstacle, remember the peasant boy who became Japan's most powerful ruler. Remember that sometimes the most powerful weapon isn't strength or wealth or noble birth, but the absolute refusal to accept that your dreams are impossible. Thank you for watching this video about Toyotomi Hideyoshi's incredible journey from peasant to ruler. If you enjoyed this exploration of Japanese history, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more fascinating stories from Japan's past. Leave a comment below letting us know what aspect of Hideyoshi's story surprised you the most.